where do you get sheepskin?
There's a local store that has them, but uh, like in town where I'm at. But
You live in a town with like 500 people, right?
yeah, I don't even know if it's 500, but like the Steamboat Springs is like 12,000, but like I live north of it and it's maybe like a few hundred. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like the store is your post office, a trading post. Uh, like you could buy, I don't know, bear paws and drink a beer all in one place.
Yeah. They sell alcohol. There's a local little grocer in there. That's where my mailbox is. Um, there's a deli, a little deli in there. Um, and then in the summers, like right now, there's a ice cream place and a pizza shop outside. They're like a brick oven pizza shop they set up.
Nice.
Um, it's actually a place in town, but they come to up for the summer and have like a satellite location for pizzas. It's pretty sweet. It's like the
Nice.
best pizza too. If you're not outside of making it yourself, you know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, well, cool. So, years ago we were building this private equity fund and um, thinking about what types of businesses we wanted to buy and um, grow as investors. We picked SendX. Um, and I'm curious, like when we were evaluating SendX, I mean, we liked the team, we liked the product, but what gap did you see in the whole email marketing space in general that made it more compelling for you?
I think it was less about a gap and more about a thesis at the time, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's a large market. It was in sort of an exciting time, and we also knew that sort of it fit the bill and what we were looking for more than sort of like a specific gap, right?
Hmm.
We knew it was in a stage that presented opportunity. We knew that we knew the space well, although like I'll argue now that it's way more complex than we thought still, right? Um, but I think we were right about a lot of things and the opportunity at hand, and you know, as to date, like so to speak, that's been true.
Was there, when we were doing our due diligence, was there an aha moment for you where you sort of realized, you know what, these guys have a strategy or a product that's like it's got something there.
Yeah, for sure. I think interestingly enough, it was also more of a behind the scenes product, right? It was right when Um, they also had the SendPost product coming along, which is the sending engine behind SendX, and sort of owning that entire cloud MTA and the infra behind SendX is such a huge opportunity there. Not only is it upsell opportunity and expansion stuff, but like you now get into a whole other realm of pricing arbitrage, much larger volume, sending lots of billions of data points. Um, and that was actually not even being monetized at the time.
Yeah, and a lot of ESPs were just using third-party sending engines, right? Still do.
They still do, even at the time, much of the market was coming together. Everyone was sort of acquiring up to have all of this um, all in one platform on the front end sending and the back end sending together, right? Like, you know, MailChimp and it was Mandrill, I think, and then um, you know, got a little
SendGrid
bug
and
on me. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Like all the major players sort of like started acquiring, and we were uh, posed to be in that space through this acquisition, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned platform. This kind of came up in a podcast recently I was listening to about platforms. Platforms are by definition horizontal. Um, and some companies sort of zag, where you say like, let's do what Monday.com did. Let's pick a vertical, go deep into a vertical, land and expand from there. Um, but we haven't really done that, right? We've sort of said, look, if you're a responsible good sender, you're welcome here. Um, what's your thought process about being a platform, being horizontal, and kind of not taking that vertical approach at first?
Yeah, it's a strategic play and it's very controversial. And I think a lot of people we've talked to have tried to narrow us into a vertical. And I'm not saying you can't, um, but you have to also be prepared for that TAM, that total addressable market to drop as well, right? And when you're sort of looking for opportunities, we were much more focused on sort of doing email sending right and solving the complexities behind the scenes, which is something that I think is overshadowed, right? So a lot of people, instead of sort of like solving these complexities to align with the providers like the Gmails, the AT&Ts, the Yahoos, they sort of take the route of banning accounts to simplify the variables as well, right? But like the entire back end engine on SendPost is built for accommodating the most complex problems and exposing those sort of insights to solve them. And that's something that in the world of email sending, we want to be available for sort of everyone. That becomes a much more horizontal play, right? Just out the gate at the moment.
Yeah. So, so in complete opposite to what I just said, um, we are building features specific to e-commerce. We've got Shopify integrations coming out, revenue attributions already there. Um, like, what the heck is so difficult about revenue attribution for e-commerce? Like, why is it so hard for it seems like a really simple use case. Like, how much money did this email make me? Why is this so hard for ESPs to obtain?
Um, so let me come back to that in 1 second and remind me of the question if I forget. But you brought something up that's important, which I think is as we dip into the world of AI and much more deeply into connected tools, we're able to accommodate markets horizontally with a much more personalized approach to them in a almost a vertical fashion individually, right? At scale. So when you're talking about sort of e-commerce more specifically, or a publisher or someone in the iGaming space, when they sort of come onto our platform, we're now able to start to build personalization as though you're targeting them in a more vertical way. And that goes for the marketing side of things on the front end too. So I think that's an important difference than in the past. You would have to sort of most people would go vertically and then they'd open up a new vertical, then a new vertical, then a new vertical versus looking at that foundationally from a horizontal perspective, but personalizing it as though it's vertical. So that's an important component to like the horizontal play. Now back to what your sort of question was a second ago, which is much more about revenue attribution, right?
Mhm.
Um, I, I don't think it's necessarily difficult any more than attribution, other types of attribution, right? And attribution models, you can debate them forever. But when it comes to email attribution, specifically around e-commerce, it's probably one of the more easy things to attribute, which is one big advantage, right? Because you have tracking directly integrated with a commerce platform. You know if they're checking out, you know the value that they're checking out with, and you know tracking it whether they came from your email or not. Now you can say first click, last click, different other types of attribution, but we know for sure um, that there's some point of attribution from your email just by tracking a click and understanding if there was a purchase post that.
Yeah, yeah.
Did that
W-
answer your question all right? Or like where else do you want me to go with that?
well, take me to a before and after. I mean, there are other email service providers in offering services for e-commerce, and it seems like they haven't figured out solid revenue attribution for those specific customers. Why has it been hard for them? Like, I guess in other words, like, what's the before and after for an e-commerce customer coming into SendX?
Okay, well, generally speaking, any provider that's focused on e-commerce has some sort of attribution, and it's more like levels of like how um, how good is the attribution and what can you do with it, right? Um, because I think that it goes deeper when you're trying to optimize for revenue. Attribution is one component of it, but then taking those data insights and optimizing for more revenue is another component of that. That's why it becomes important. Um, but you asked the second part of your question. You said, take me through sort of like a before and after on SendX. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Um, so uh, I- I'll give you. I have a customer in mind at the moment, but ultimately, I don't think um, revenue attribution what was sort of the biggest problem. It's a value add on top of all of this, and it's much more of a in some regard uh, both a vanity metric and an important metric. Right? In the case of this customer on the before, there was some attribution. It wasn't done very well, but it's always going to be looked at as how does that compare to the future um, on how it's attributed. And if it's not one to one, it doesn't really do you any good. But in my opinion, our revenue attribution is better, and then it also allows us to sort of like optimize their emails in a better way. Give me one second, man. Sorry, the fam's leaving, and I'm just trying to give him a sec. And it's
Where's
like
everybody? Where are they
herding
going?
cats. It's time to go to town, right? It's like it's a trip, and you go like one thing we figured out though is grocery pickup is the key, right? Like don't go grocery shopping with the kids. Order all the groceries, have a pickup time. That centers your trip to town, and then everything else is sort of like layers on top of that. But they'll bring you the groceries out and easy enough.
That's a great idea.
But yeah,
Wow. Instead of, Mommy, can I have these really unhealthy chocolate chip cookies? No.
yeah,
Why? I really don't want to tell you why right now. I have a
or
list to go
like
through.
and like doing all you can to be patient in front of everybody all the time,
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
entire trip to the grocery store. Yeah, it's a challenge.
yeah.
Um, so, anyways, we were sort of talking about the before and after with Sendex on attribution. I know I didn't answer that too well, being a little bit distracted, but um, yeah, I think the exciting thing is the after, right? The before is sort of the challenge, but the exciting thing is the after, in which you can understand which emails are attributing more revenue, and then with AI modeling and the different things that you can do now, and particularly within now that we have sort of data, like I said earlier, across billions of data points on sending it within our sending engine, we have the ability to start to optimize for more revenue. That's where things get sort of exciting. This is a little bit more in the works right now, but the after is where I think we can really do something interesting here. Um, so like I mean, imagine like taking the insights of the most highly converting emails, writing new ones based on what's working best across the board on those within a subject matter, based on a master prompt that has all your information of your company and what's important. Um, and then working towards like knowing that this should convert an extra 10% or something to that degree, right? We have data points that really back this stuff up.
Cool. Yet we still get customers who sign up for the product and send like 100,000 emails tomorrow. Um, so like, and a lot of times it's hard to explain why that's not a good idea. And I'm wondering if you could break that down a little bit. Like, when a sender signs up to a provider like us, and they send too many emails too fast, what actually happens to their domain and IP reputations? What actually is the consequence of doing that?
Yeah, so we go back to sort of the three parts that are important for success, right? Which is like your business strategy, the ESP you choose and its capabilities, and then the provider, which is out of your control, right? Um, the provider being Yahoo, AT&T, Google, whatever. They're going to set those sort of standards. And the number one thing you can do to drop your domain reputation, IP reputation, is just send too many emails too fast. Um, that is going to just indicate to them that you're spamming. That's all it is, really. Like you need to build your reputation by sending uh, at the pace as it's acceptable to them, and also uh, they're going to analyze sort of your content, the natural flow of consistent sending or not. Um, and that's another component of this. Like they're going to have general max volumes with this domain, sending domain associated with this IP or IPs um, that you can send. And as those thresholds increase, though through send legitimate good sending, those they'll unlock higher volumes, and your reputations will stay higher. Or those are the indicators, right? Like whether your reputations, low, medium, high, etc., are indicators as to like what the providers are looking at as you're sending, and that's why it becomes important. Um, you don't follow sort of these hidden rules. They're kind of hidden. That's the black box that people kind of don't understand. Like how fast is too fast, how slow is too slow. But like uh, that you have indicators for that. That's the point, and, so, and you need to you need to be monitoring it and making adjustments accordingly. Now, with our product, we do have algorithms that will auto warm up your IPs. We have tooling and add-ons for warming up your campaigns, making sure even across individual providers that you're not sending too many emails too fast, and that's a super helpful part of working with a SendX or a SendPost for sure.
What's realistic here? I was just speaking with a customer, and she was expecting, she had I think 120,000 emails. Um, it's a big list, and she was expecting um, 6 week, 6 to 8 week warm up. It took probably twice that. Um, and I think like sometimes there's different expectations. What what's realistic here? Like how can you sort of convey tactically what a sender or an e-commerce company might be able to do to improve their deliverability or inboxing?
Okay, well, deliverability and inboxing are just one metric within the ability to scale volumes that matters, right? That's sort of a indicative success metric before success kind of happens. But um, what I think what you're asking is like, what's realistic to like warm up 100 to 120,000 emails, let's say daily, um, at a cadence, right? So these are different things that matter. It's like, what's your cadence? Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Um, what is your strategy? Are these 120,000 like all opt in and you're just switching ESPs, or are these like cold, or is it a variable of a hybrid of the two? Um, what I can say is, generally speaking, and like uh, from my experience using SendPost, like you can warm up to 120,000 in 10 to 14 days. Now, there are a lot of variables to that. that's where the 6 to 8 weeks or longer comes in. Are they, uh, you know, are they, is the content good? How old's the sending domain? What's the current domain reputation? What's the sort of like, is the IP warmed up that's associated with it or not? There's just so many variables that if you said, hey, if we're if we want to go like by perfect, generally perfect like warm up, let's say 10 to 14 days, and you can't even put a date on that exact either because it also matters the makeup of your list. If you have 80% Gmail, Gmail is going to warm up way faster than a Yahoo, right? AT&T somewhere in between or whatnot. But like providers have very different allowances on sending speeds, especially when new domains are associated with new IPs and you're moving to a new provider. I wish I could give you a concrete answer, but we'd have to say like, here's the here's the 20 variables, and I would still say here's what we're going to look out for, right? But we're going to shoot for like a 10 to 14 day window and we're going to adjust accordingly. And it's all about making sure one, we're not just trying to warm up, but we're aligning with the business goals throughout this. And two, that we're setting the right expectations in the warm up that says these are the things we're looking out for. And we're going to make adjustments accordingly. It's just how we need to be on the same page with that.
This is really interesting because PLG is a really important idea. It's a big groundswell in SaaS, and the complexity of email is the way what you're describing is basically like everyone's situation is so different, especially when you get to big volume sending. You have domain reputation variables, you have IP address um, pools, you have quality of the content, cadence, all these things that you mentioned. You can't just buy a product and your troubles go away. Like we've really struggled to kind of balance the individual touch that uh, these big senders need versus like scaling the product in a way that can accommodate that kind of complexity. What are your what how do you think about this?
Yeah, the interesting thing is the way in which we're sort of like following best practices and aligning with the big providers has always been in play, but it's gotten more and more strict. And so in the past, you could go to a provider, you wouldn't have to authenticate your sending domain, and you would be able to send larger volumes faster if you're on a shared pool. And it would say like, sent via Trevor at SendX via HubSpot or something to that effect. Those days are over. That was a big shift in the space where you have to basically be responsible for your own sending authority and reputation, right? So there's still lingering aspects of that are a challenge that people still think they can kind of get on a platform, just start sending large volumes, just give me a shared environment or whatnot. But the days of like old email blasting in large volumes and being successful is over. So that transition is still somewhat in play, and I would say it's getting harder and harder for providers. And this is really why providers are sort of laying down the hammer on like let's say banning accounts or like keeping things as simple as possible because they've also not all have been built for these more strict best practices, even if they've always existed, that are becoming more and more important. And so I think over time, though, like these adjustments will be made. Best practices will be like more exposed. Everybody will understand the general concepts of what's required to be successful. But right now, this is where it really matters to pick the right ESP because right now you need someone that's able to have the levers and expose them to you to be able to be successful and follow the new age best practices, which are much more strict and more complex.
Back in the day, I was running a career blog, and I got pretty good numbers on my email list. But that was Mailchimp times. You just sign up for Mailchimp, put a form on your WordPress blog, and you just go go go. Um, and so when I started with working deep into SendX, like it's been a shift for me to kind of go from, I mean, I just signed up for Mailchimp and I had tens of thousands and I didn't have any problem. But I don't think that would work anymore. That would immediately have terrible deliverability.
I mean, I remember setting up like a Interspire instance on a server, and you would send out emails, and you'd get pretty good responses and everything. Like there was never like a question of whether, in fact, the layers of detail that are required now almost never had to be exposed, and that's why people would sign up for an ESP. You'd send emails, and all you'd be like is like, "Are there opens, clicks?" That's about all you needed,
Yeah.
right? Uh, d- Now you need to understand your deliverability. Now you need to understand your inboxing because engagement's more difficult. Your content needs to be better. Like y- these things, there's definitely more variables than there used to be.
So give me a diagnostic framework. Let's say I started a career blog. I got like I put a form on my WordPress site. I didn't do anything else. I didn't whitelist. I didn't change my domain sending. Um, and I've got like I don't know, wildly successful career advice. And I had 10,000 people on my email service provider. Um, but I'm just not happy with my opens and clicks. Give me a diagnostic framework. Like, how do I go about figuring out what the heck's wrong?
It's a good question. So like let's first start with like deliverability and inboxing. Those are like the main two things that at a high level. Like outside of let's say your content or how you feel it's a great content, fine. But like uh first you do want to understand your deliverability. Like how much are actually getting sent out. And that because in the end of the day, you might have like a number of different errors, which ideally you have them aggregated so you understand which errors you're addressing first. The ones with the most, you need to address first to increase your deliverability at in the most basic sense. But you need to understand like how much are actually getting sent and processed and delivered, right? That's that you should improve if it's lower than you know normal, whatever, at least call it 97%, 98%. Um, and then I would look at inboxing, and inboxing is a bit of a black box, right? So like the only way you can understand your inboxing is actually if you send your sort of email via your infra on your sending domain and IPs to some sort of seed list that says I I control all of these inboxes and I'll tell you which ones are landing in inbox or spam. So you have a general understanding of like what your inboxing rates are. Now, if you solve your deliverability problems and you are consistent with your sending, um, I, you're generally going to start inboxing better and better as long as your engagement is like there and you do have an audience that cares about what you're reading. Um, and that should become less and less of a problem. If you need to, there's other ways to sort of solve that, right? You can have those like seed emails, have opens and clicks and certain things, but keep keep in mind providers and AI are getting smarter and smarter, right? And what they're really trying to get down to is legitimate senders are gonna prevail. And right now we're still living in a little bit of a world where legitimate senders still get hurt in the bucket of all senders, but that will get better. And so um, but like I would just start with deliverability and inboxing first, no doubt.
What's the mental checklist? Like, just give me the rapid fire. Check this, check that. Like you were an auto mechanic.
Yeah, like if you're moving to us as like a new ESP, or are you already with us, or what's the scenario? What's the context?
Let's say let's say I'm just starting a blog. I've got 10,000 on there. Not happy with my deliverability. I'm using whatever tool. Let's just call it X, not X. Well, that doesn't mean anything anymore. Let's call it Y. Um,
Yeah.
EMSY. Yeah.
Well,
So
first
what?
I'm gonna ask you like
Mhm.
how I'll have to be. I'll ask candid questions about like how legitimate you are. Like you're just starting a blog, but you have 10,000 contacts. That doesn't sound reasonable. But like I'd say, where'd you get your contacts, right?
Spoke at a
Uh,
conference. I don't know. Just say they're like double opted in. Let's just say they're all right. This is good.
yeah. So then I'll look at like your sending domain history. Uh, how old is this domain, right? Like that's more what I'm getting at. If it's brand new, you're gonna have to build that up. Either way, if you just got this list, whether they're double opt in at a conference or whatever, you're gonna have to go slow. You're gonna have a warm up plan on there. We're gonna agree to. Um, we'll assign an IP. You really only need one IP associated with this sending domain. Um, and then we'll authenticate your sending domain. We'll make sure that that's all, crosses checks and balances because that's going to give you an indicator to providers that you're legitimate. Uh, I would recommend having MX records or an inbox associated with it for replies. These are just things I would set up, and then I would, uh, if you have not sent to any of these emails before, I would go very slow, and I'd segment your lists accordingly. There's smarter ways or more simple ways to do it. And the most simple ways, you're just going to chop up your list and following the warm up plan and send campaigns to those lists. 100, 200, 400, 800, day 4, 5, 6, 7, up till you get to the 10,000 mark. In a smarter way, I'd break it out by provider. I'd do an inverse warm ups where I'd say like if it depending upon where you got these and what the makeup is and whether they're business emails or consumer emails or whatever, I'd map that to the provider sort of cadences for warm up allowance. We can put our IPs in auto warm up. We can tag your contacts by provider so that we have like these are all your Gmails, these are all your Yahoos, these are all your business, whatever, and structure your warm up in accordance to providers. That'd be my biggest suggestion if you can. Um, and then on top of that, before you send anything, you're gonna cross check the content, right? Big subject lines, content. Um, I might be missing some things. That's at a high level. That's sort of like the big points you're gonna do, and then you're gonna monitor as you go. That's when you start making sort of like adjustments on insights.
Cool. A lot of thought leadership in this space. Um, who's someone in the email marketing or maybe even e-commerce space that you admire their approach to deliverability, automation, AI, RevOps? Um, who's someone in there, and what have you learned from following them?
So I had a recent conversation. Like I'm I'm getting more active online, but I'm not hugely like following a bunch of people. I'm much more always have been about sort of like genuine connection. So surface level stuff, I'm not that great at. But I did have a recent conversation with Lori Beth or LB, who I originally met at Email Industries, um, and she knows she's a pretty well known person in the deliverability space, right? Um, and we dipped our toes into sort of like deeper conversations as to like where the space is going, what's possible, how if you were to structure um, a back end system now, what it would look like, how to make things smarter, um, what impacts AI is having on things, how the market has huge gaps in it, and I think adopting some of like her ideas and things has been really insightful, as well as just learning from people that have sort of been in this space for so long. This is, uh, you know, new in the sense of like 5 years for me. I've always been in the SaaS space, but email has surprisingly got more and more complex, and so getting thrown to the wolves with it, definitely learning from people like LB has been super helpful.
What's one thing you took away from that conversation?
Uh, I think that generally speaking, the mechanisms to be successful in high volume sending and get good deliverability and inboxing are not necessarily either there or exposed by by the providers available in the market. And I'm not saying they don't exist internally or in the back end or they're not possible, but they're definitely not being exposed to the end customer in a useful way that I think probably for a lot of reasons, right? The more complex things you get, the more like supporting queries you have, the more problems you have sort of like um, having to deal with the complexities of it. But we're definitely, as we are sort of talking earlier, getting into the world where these sorts of complexities are going to be required for success, um, and they're under they're not there. They're not there publicly.
How has this information changed the decision you've made at SendX? Has it influenced a feature call or how you approach a customer conversation differently? How has it impacted you?
Yeah, so I think like generally speaking, some some interesting things like from when I have sales calls or whatnot, and we start talking about what's possible. People who have used a lot of different platforms either get super excited, and it might be from one specific feature that they wish existed somewhere else or something to that effect. Um, or they'll say, like, this is just a super productive conversation. Like, I've talked to a lot of different people, and this is the most information I've gotten. And then really, it's just about um, not just having a deeper feature set, but again, like we said, it's aligning your mentality with where the world's going to be successful with email. And in order to do that, you have to dip your toes into these deeper conversations. And I think people just appreciate it.
Nice. Well, that's a wrap, Trevor. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. It's good talking to you again.